All right, Liz, take it away.
All right, so we haven't redone our bylaws since 2018. So with the community, with the CMAP community plan, they gave us a lot of recommendations. So we figured it was high time we had to update our bylaws. So this is when we added the positions and the committees. So does anybody, well, no, we won't, well, we could ask, and everybody on this call probably knows about CMAP. If you don't, will you want to raise your hand? Anybody raising their hand, Melissa?
Not at this time, but what we can do is perhaps Elvis, if you could work some magic in the background and throw some links in the chat while Liz is talking, that would be great.
All right, so we applied for the CMAP grant in 2019. We won it mostly because we had 4 different aldermen, 3 police districts, and the expressway cutting us down the middle, and 2 state reps. So they felt sorry for us and felt like we didn't have a cohesive plan. So that was one of the reasons we won it. Then we had COVID, so we couldn't get around to get all these surveys done and stuff. So anyway, finally, if you were at the release party last week, we got the plan done and we're moving ahead with it. So anyway, so moving on from that, does anybody, did everybody pretty much look at the bylaws? I would really hate to go through all the bylaws. It's quite a few, it's a lot of pages. So they're out there on our website.
I just had a quick question. Would we be able to see the copy of the bylaws from 2018 and just see what was updated to 2023?
Elvis, are the old ones still on the website or no?
No, I took down the old ones. I have to post them back up. So I can do that by the end of the week.
Okay.
Thanks, or if you could just email to whoever's interested in seeing the old bylaws.
Yeah.
Yeah, we want to be sure they're public. We want to be sure that there is
absolutely
between it. So we'll be sure to post them up so everyone can view them.
Right. We're all about transparency. So, all right. So I guess we're going to go through, some of the new committees, the new positions on the board, and CMAP, has worked with several communities. They've done Bronzeville, they did McKinley Park. So, we've seen what they've done with those communities and how long it took those communities to get the recommendations rolled in. And not all of them will be able to be rolled in, but they said it usually took the community organizations about 2 years to get rolling with the recommendations.
And 5 to 10 years to fully realize the full document.
Right, because the plan's like a 5 to 10 year plan. So you have to reevaluate after that amount of time. So
all right, Liz, we've moved on to board member positions. If you'd like to describe the president's role.
All right, so I'm the current president, and I guess I could read all these things, but basically, I uphold our mission, standards for the board and the volunteers. The new thing is applying for grants. That was one of the recommendations from CMAP. We did apply for the grant for CMAP, so we're going to get more involved with getting more grants from other areas. So that's part of my job that's new. And then I've always pretty much been the liaison. We have a lot of community partners that we work with. So I've maintained the relationships with these community organizations. And then I build and maintain relationships with our elected officials, which are our aldermen, the police department, and our state representatives. So that's basically my role. So go ahead, Melissa.
So as I introduced, my name is Melissa. I am running again for vice president. As I mentioned, last year was my first year in that role. So high level, the vice president's role is to, of course, support the president first and foremost, but specific to the vice presidency, our goal is to develop and maintain relationships in regards to zoning. Especially maintaining connections with the aldermanic zoning representatives. Every ward is a little bit different. And for those of you who don't know the language zoning, it's basically new development in our ward. So the built environment, thinking new construction. Sometimes it's not new construction. Sometimes it is asking for permission to use a building for a different use than is currently allowed. It is the vice president's role to represent the association during community meetings or assign delegates to attend on our behalf. We'll get into this a little bit later, but high level, the president's goal is to continue to advocate for the community's vision. And what we heard in our CMAP documents is especially key for equitable housing. Elvis, if you would like to jump to the next one. There we go.
Yeah, thanks, Melissa. So Daniel is also running for his position. He currently is the treasurer for the Avondale board. His responsibility is, of course, to oversee the day-to-day bookkeeping of the association, as well as monitor the receipt and distribution of all funds that's held by our two accounts. We have a main account and a garden account. He's also responsible for ensuring that all financial reports are clearly reflecting the association's financial positions. He's also responsible for ensuring that we meet all the criteria set by the states and the federal government to maintain our nonprofit status, which also includes making sure we have a bank account. So he works alongside Liz to ensure that that goes smoothly. I currently serve as the secretary of the organization. I will not be running this upcoming year. I have served in the secretary role for 3 years. And in those 3 years, if you visited the Avondale Neighborhood Org website, I designed it. I use my very little skills in MailChimp, use their template to organize the website and create a new fresh look to the Avondale page. We've had over 10,000 visitors to the website, which is pretty cool, and over 200 subscribers on that website. So I think I did a great job. But we're looking for someone to come in and take over. Your responsibility will be to manage the website, maintain the website, update the content to the website, ensure that the programs coordinated by community partners are also visible on the website. So a lot goes on to that role, in addition to creating and disseminating the newsletter. The newsletter goes out every month. It's something that it's the way that we communicate with our local residents, communicate with our city elected officials. And so we want to be sure that that's consistently going out. So you would curate it and send it out. In addition to that, I do archive our work, including the bylaws. And so I will be transferring that all to the new person, and they would oversee that work. But yeah, I would ditto what Allie said. We do want to highlight Melissa's role as well and Melissa's leadership. And I'm happy that they're continuing to consider running this upcoming election. Unfortunately, it is time for me to sort of take a step back for the moment. We have this new role. It's also a new recommendation by CMAP. It's Director of Events. This is a new crucial role that we found it as well to be a need for the organization. This person will plan and execute various social and service events throughout the year. Some past examples would include graffiti cleaning, mural beautification projects, and community cleanups. We as a board recognize that this is a needed role. We want to ensure that we're building community with local residents and ensuring that there's someone tasked to do that. We had been successful in a couple of events this year. We want to ensure that we further promote this role and make this a really big position within the organization. So we're super excited about this one and recommend everyone on this call to sort of consider it if you're eligible. They partner with the treasurer to increase membership, which will be a big responsibility of this role. They'll work in tandem with the treasurer to ensure that we push our drives, and so we want to be sure that's something that's also included in this position. And they will manage our social media presence and coordination with the promotion committee. So big role, big responsibility, but I think we recognize that it's a needed role and excited to introduce it and add it to the board.
And then at this point, if anyone has any questions specific to the board member positions, if you can go ahead and raise your little digital hand, we can address any of those questions at this time. And if not, we can continue to move on to
I just want to make a point that Elvis will train the new secretary. So, so people who are interested, don't be freaked out, because I am very technically challenged and I used to do the newsletter. So, but anyway.
We do have a question from Ben. If Ben, you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, I might be jumping forward a little bit. Just curious what the expectation is from board members in terms of time, financial contribution, fundraising, stuff like that.
You are jumping the gun a touch, but I love the question.
Okay.
It's several slides up.
All right.
But no, we will address it. Don't worry.
Okay, cool.
Eric, you are next on the question list.
Yeah, hi. I read some of the requirements for eligibility for board positions, and does that also apply for the newer role? Like the director of events, for example, is something I'm interested in, but I definitely don't meet the criteria right now.
Yeah, I think, and Elvis and Liz, you guys can jump in. I think we recognize that we are transitioning, into this new set of bylaws. And so I think we want to be a little bit flexible this year. So for instance, a lot of the eligibility requirements required, I believe it was 6 months of participation. And for folks who are interested in this position, especially, this position didn't exist 6 months ago. So, Elvis, do you want to jump in on any other thoughts?
I think that's a conversation we had to the T. We understand that we adopted these pretty late in the year, so providing the eligibility requirements with a grain of salt, considering that there wasn't enough time to ensure that you were interested to meet that criteria ahead of time. So we may grandfather in some of the rules to ensure that there is some flexibility.
And I would say that like attending today is a great first step. We have one more meeting before our elections in November. So I feel like you're already kind of putting your best foot forward in regards to that. So we'll be flexible is I think the
And then plus some of these, there's going to be people working under these positions as well on these committees. So, even if you don't make it to the head of the committee, there's going to be like events. It's going to need a lot of help and volunteering. So, other community organizations have people working under their directors. So, there's options. But I mean, we are being a little flexible here because the CMAP was supposed to come out in the spring and it got held up. So this is like late in the year to come out with this. So,
and I think this is a good point to remind folks that who haven't maybe had a chance to look at our bylaws yet, is that the board member positions are elected positions. So we hold our elections now every year in November, whereas when we get into the special committee members, those are intended to be the group of folks that Liz was talking about. That's going to be more of an appointed position. So the board members are the voting right members. We didn't want to get into the nuance of all the nitty gritty here. But if there are any questions that pop up, feel free to shoot us an email and we can answer any other specific questions.
And I mean, this is new to us too. These committees are new, so it'll be like a learning curve of getting up the committees up and going.
So jumping into special committees, these special committees came out of the 2+ years of CMAP research with our neighbors, with you all. So these came to a head as something that is sorely needed in our community. So I'm just going to do a high level. The first one is Public Outreach and Promotion Committee. The expectation is to help us curate social media content and posts, working with the director of events, creating campaigns for marketing and promotion, and then outreaching for the community partners. Again, with the promotion of the greater Avondale community. The Arts and Culture Committee, our expectation is that they will be interested in liaising with other arts and cultural groups within Avondale or within the adjacent Avondale community. Some of our past partners have been NAC, and that has been a successful partnership in the past. But we would be looking for them to reach out for new partnerships as well. We're expecting them to promote the neighborhood plan in relationships to art and cultural expectations, and then to curate Avondale's creative and cultural identities. So I feel like this tends to lean more towards our murals that we've worked on over the last several decades at this point, right, Liz?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if murals and arts and culture are of interest to you, this would be your committee. Green Space and Climate Resiliency. This group is intended to liaise with the clean and climate groups within the boundaries of Avondale. Any of you who have been around for a little while or might be familiar with the Avondale Gardening Alliance, they're one of our regular partners. Our goal is to not compete with what they're doing, but to help complement what they're doing and to work with them and other green groups that may exist that we may not even be aware of that are working within the Avondale boundaries. We're also looking for them to cultivate Avondale's green space and climate resiliency identity. Avondale, I believe, was identified as one of the most park poor communities, as well as having an incredibly low tree canopy. So this is something that has been proven to be very important in our community specifically. Let's see if my computer wants to work. There we go. Safer Streets Committee. So this committee would be intended to liaise with the multimodal transit groups. So thinking biking, walking, vehicles as well, I guess we can include within the boundaries of Avondale. For those of you who have experienced other partnerships, again, we'd be looking to build on those relationships. Looking for advocacy in the safe and connected sidewalks, bike networks. For those of you who are familiar with the fact that our community is bifurcated by 9094, so half of Avondale is to the west of 9094 and the other half is to the east. And so ensuring underpass and expressway viaducts are walkable, safe.
We all know what the best side.
Sorry, 1 second. We'll get to questions in a second, sorry. And then improve sidewalk and walkways around the viaducts, and then cultivate Avondale's safer transit identity. So this is for kind of all modes of transit. And then Liz, I think you're going to talk about Economic Development Committee, and then we can get to questions.
All right, so the Economic Development Committee is basically building, relationships with our local businesses, promoting them, bringing attention to new ones, seeking and providing information and coordinating networking opportunities. The businesses need to be within the boundaries of Avondale, and then maintain the 501c6 status of the chamber. So this is an influx right now because the chamber was formed it's a separate entity, and there were people that were starting it up, and it kind of went to the wayside. So right now I'm in the process of meeting with some people to see if they're going to take over the chamber, or what's going to be what's going to happen with this committee. So, it's at some point this may become a board member position, but right now we have to figure out what's going to happen with the chamber, if it's going to exist, or if it's going to merge, or if it's going to be its own entity. So.
All right. So then if anyone has any questions about any of those special committees that we just listed, please raise your digital hand and I'll go ahead and call on you if you have any questions. All right, Ben, you jumped up having a question.
Yeah, I'd like to hear more. I'm not familiar with the background of the Avondale Chamber of Commerce and the, I guess, current state of the 501c6 status. I work for an association that has a 501c6 status, so I'm familiar with some of the nuances, but this seems a little interesting, so I'd like to maybe hear a little bit back.
All right, well, I'm the history.
So give the very abbreviated version. We could probably.
Yeah.
All right, there was an old chamber called Greater Avondale Chamber of Commerce that deceased, that just fell apart. Nothing happened. About, I don't know, right before COVID hit, a bunch of businesses got together to form a chamber, and then it kind of got thrown to the wayside because of COVID. So then a bunch of businesses got together. There was a board that was put together, and they got the 501c3 and the C6 and the non-for-profit. But then something happened. All the board members kind of had issues and went away. So it still exists, but there's nothing really happening with it. So I'm trying to find somebody to take it over, or to see if it wants to be, merged with Logan Square, which originally when it went in, everybody wanted their own chamber. So that's kind of the situation right now. There was no board. All the board members had one thing or another happen. And so it's sitting there and nobody's really doing anything. There was a website set up and all that. So that's kind of where it is.
And Liz, it's worth noting that the 501c6 status is still active.
Yes.
Not defunct.
Yes. No, it's still active. So we're trying to find somebody to take it over. And if we don't, then the Logan Square Chamber could merge, and it could be the Logan Square Avondale Chamber. But we're still not at that point yet. We're still talking to businesses to try to get them to take it over. I have meetings planned.
Cool. Thanks.
No, thank you. Any other questions regarding the special committees? Perfect.
I was just going to say, we all know what the best side of the expressway is. So that was the most important part.
Thanks. Commitments. So we got to the commitment sections. So you'll see that the board member and special committee members have very similar expectations. We're expecting you to attend monthly community meetings. They are both a combination of in-person and digital. We're currently working out, and we want to work with our new partners on what version of our meetings exist. Prior to COVID, we were in person 100% of the time. Obviously, during 2020 and 2021, we were digital. And then we've worked on this sort of hybrid conglomeration where sometimes we're in person and sometimes we're not, depending on the speakers, depending on the availability. But the goal is that you would be available in person every month for our community meetings. Attending the initial training and onboarding, we expect that would be a roughly 2-hour commitment of time. Attending our yearly retreat, we typically hold that around the December-January timeframe, although that can probably be flexible. Usually it's about a half a day, 4 hours or so, once a year, and that's to kind of right the ship and evaluate kind of what went well, what didn't, and what we'd like to focus on for the next year. And then the deltas between the two, which are highlighted in yellow, our board members are expected to attend monthly board meetings in person or digital once a month. And then special committees, we're just expecting to see a report to the president on the status of any activities that happened over the course of that month. So that will probably be a much smaller, half hour, depending on how busy that month was. So this is all what we should have probably said in the very beginning. This is an all volunteer run organization. So none of these positions are paid. All of these are volunteer positions. We are not expecting anything but your time really at this point. We do have in the qualifications to be a member section of our bylaws. It clearly shows how you can be a member. One of them is a membership payment, although that is something that it was, I think $5 minimum was the buy-in, and Elvis should be able to remind me a little bit better, but I believe there was a section that spoke to and in lieu of volunteer commitment for any monies, if money is a challenge. Any questions about the commitments expected? All right, I don't see any hands raised digitally, so I'm going to keep going. I'm not going to read this massive amount of text here for you. You're welcome. High level, I think the things we want to focus on, a lot of us have very differing opinions, and sometimes we need to agree to disagree, and I think that that's okay. We think that that's okay. We want to be respectful of one another and just agree that at some point we're going to disagree. We take our status as the community conduit very seriously, in so much so that we request of our board members and our committee members that they do not share their individual opinions in the same breath as stating the name of our organization. So saying you are, saying, if I would say, hey, I'm Melissa, I'm the vice president of ANA, and I hate bees. I don't hate bees. I'm a beekeeper. I love bees. But that would be an example of not maintaining our code of ethics. Our goal is to be as welcoming as possible to all of our community members. So again, I'm not going to go through all of this. The other part at the very bottom is at the end of the day, we ask that the ANA, the Avondale Neighborhood Association, is to be used as an organizational tool, again, as a conduit for a community, and it's not to be used for personal gain, both financially as well as other means of gain. There's a little bit more information that you can read in our bylaws, but these are kind of the highlights.
Okay, so
We have a question really quickly from Autumn.
Thank you.
Hi, yeah.
Right.
Sorry, I'm still trying to form my question. If you could go back to the other slide, I don't know if it was something on that. I'm sorry, I'm having a kind of a scattered brain day. For those who don't know, I am autistic. It's something I've mentioned before. So, sorry.
It's okay. And if you need time to collect your question, feel free to throw it in the chat. And we can circle back at the end where we'll have more opportunity for questions if that's easier.
Okay, maybe just do that for now.
Absolutely. Okay, no problem. Any other questions? Thank you, Elvis, for seeing that. I did not. Let me pull up my people again. Too many windows. All right. Eligibility. Member must be in good standing with the organization. Again, we're not going to go into the depths of Article 4, but we'll send a link if we haven't already to our bylaw location. I think Elvis, you either already have or will. We're asking that the member have been active in the organization for a minimum of 6 months. Again, we talked about this earlier in the slides, especially for some of these newer positions that were not in existence prior to the new adoption of our bylaws. Don't let this keep you from expressing an interest in a position, please. Let's talk about it, especially if you are new to the community. And one other thing worth noting is that to be nominated and elected for the seat of president, you must have served as an officer of the board for a minimum of 1 year. So an officer of board, again, is those voted on positions, not the special committees. So if you've served as an officer of the board for a minimum of 1 year, you are then eligible to run for president. And a president when voted in may serve for multiple terms, sequential or non-sequential. All right. Continuing for special committee eligibility, we're asking that this committee is going to be composed of a member or group of members. Again, it's going to depend on the level of interest that we have. We are asking that these members be in good standing, and they're going to be appointed by a chairperson. The special committee members are not board members, so there is that delineation. And we are asking that special committee members appointed to the board by a simple majority vote, and prospective members can complete a special committee application. Elvis, if you can throw a link to the applications, we will have the bylaws, the officer of the board application, as well as the special committee applications. Allie, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. There's actually 4 members on the board, correct?
So there are now 5 members on the board. So
Okay, I was just wondering about how the tiebreaker will work.
Yeah, no, there's 5 now. There's the president, vice president, treasurer, secretary, and then the newly created position, director of events.
Okay, so the director of events has a vote too?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. All right, I do not see any other hands raised.
Do we have a link to the applications for the committees as well? Okay, oh, thank you, Elvis. I saw you just put it in the chat.
Yeah, I'm going to keep pushing folks through our homepage. That's where it's going to redirect folks to a Google Shared Drive, and you can access our forms as well as our bylaws. And that's where we're going to post this recording as well as the bylaws that we've updated. So it'll all be featured on our homepage. Again, as Melissa mentioned, we're all volunteer, busy with our work that pays the bills. So we hope to get all this updated on our website by the end of the week.
So we mentioned applications. Elvis said they are available via our website. For this election year, we're asking that you submit your applications to our email, avondale.unite@gmail.com by October 9th. We're going to ask if you can complete the applications in full, including your full name, your legal street address, as well as filling out the questions to the best of your knowledge. For the board positions, the 5 board members that we just discussed, president, vice president, treasurer, secretary, and director of events, that election is held in the November community meeting. Our community meetings are always the 3rd Monday of the month at 7 p.m., or at least for now they are.
Yes, must be moved them around.
All right. And I believe that is the last of our slides. So if there are any questions, I see a couple of hands. Please go ahead and throw your hand up and we will jump to your question. Nina, I saw your hand up first.
Hi, everybody. I was just curious, is October 9th a hard deadline? Because we are already at the 2nd right now, and October is honestly my busiest month in terms of business, and I'm setting up for a massive installation that needs to go up and be installed by October 10th, and I have about 7,000 insects I need to pin for it. So I honestly don't have time to eat or sleep, nevertheless fill out a form. But I would be interested in doing stuff.
Understood. I think we can discuss that internally. I think for us, the reason for the October 9th deadline, just so that everyone kind of knows where we were coming from, is we need to set the ballot specifically for the elected roles. And right now we are meeting on the 9th as a board to set that. But I don't know, Elvis and Liz, I think that especially given that this is our first pancake, I think we might be able to be a little flexible with the date, depending on if other folks too, understanding that that's a week away. want to be as inclusive as possible.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to extending it for a few days, but it is going to be important for us to consolidate all of the nominations to then inform the community well in advance. So that's an internal conversation we can have, and definitely get back to this entire group and the rest of the committee, or the rest of the people on our newsletter listener.
Yes, yes, we will be, we will go ahead and follow up with that. We're planning on posting this recording as well as the forms, and I'll agree on all of the information that you'll need in our newsletter. So if you have not signed up for our newsletter, please go to our main website. You can sign up for that there as well, and we will, if we're going to update the date, we will do so there. Thank you for asking. Autumn, I believe you have your hand raised, unless it's from before.
All right. Yeah, it's well, sorry, again, all the thoughts just like come into my head. It's again, I mentioned I'm autistic. It's something that I've brought up before, and once again, I am requesting as an accessibility advocate for the meetings to be both, if it is in person, to also have it via Zoom. It's not just for me, it is for other neighbors who are unable to attend. I've had various requests given my outreach as an auxiliary member, which is now no longer a position. But this whole last year, I've been reaching out to the new businesses. I've been, in essence, a kind of my own form of director of events, even though it wasn't a thing. But that's what I was doing essentially this last year. And trying to gain new members. So I kind of feel like I've been kind of gearing up to be that kind of position, and it would be not only good for me, but also good for many of the other members who I've spoken with to be able to have the Zoom accessibility. And once again, I am volunteering my services to assist. And sorry, there was something else, and it's
I would like to address that question, if that's okay, before you move on.
Yeah.
So I think that is something that we have discussed in the past and we can review in the future. Right now, we do not have the physical capabilities to do the dual streaming, but I think the questions from earlier in the presentation about having the option of recording all future meetings and being able to share those digitally. But I think that this is absolutely something that we can address with the newly elected board. I think we'd be hesitant to make those decisions now, but we will say that prior to COVID, we did have everything in person, and we were
again, as an accessibility advocate.
Sorry, 1 second. May I please? Thank you. We were very excited to be able to share some of our in-person neighbors, but we recognize that things need to evolve. So again, this is something that we can probably address in a future board meeting with the newly elected board. Thank you. Are there any other questions before we adjourn for the evening?
Actually, yeah, I do have a follow-up. Is there something that you each could say to convince us to work with you?
Work with the Avondale Neighborhood Association?
Yeah.
Sure. Excuse me. I feel like it's probably a little out of place for us as individuals to speak to that question. Obviously, Liz and Elvis, you can say what you're thinking. For me, it's not about me, it's about the community. It's about, again, being that conduit, about listening to what our residents are hearing, and that was what part of the CMAP community plan was. So this is also part of this outreach that we are trying to do together. So for me, it's about the community. It's not about me.
Yeah, thanks, Autumn, for your question. I think it's a really, in order to encourage other folks to consider running for a position, it is a role that is demanding and you do at your own leisure. I do work with a great group of folks who have the best interests of Avondale in mind, and we want to encourage those who really want to make a difference or at least try to build some community to consider applying for these roles. And so we're just looking for someone who's ambitious and excited and compassionate to take on some of these leadership roles. And unfortunately, like, I wish I can do another role, but for now, I just want to give another shot for another opportunity and do something different. So, but I think it's a good question, Autumn. Thanks.
Yeah, good question. So, I mean, I've been involved with the neighborhood association since it came to be in 2010. So, I mean, it's been very enlightening to know what's going on in the community and to be able to let other people know what's happening within the community. It really came in well when COVID happened with mutual aid and community dinners. And so, and working with all the aldermen and stuff to try to help community members that were in need. So, it's fulfilling. It is a lot of work. I mean, I won't lie to you because it is, everybody's got jobs. But I mean, it's, getting whatever information you have to get out to the community and then try to connect the community, because we just want to be a conduit for community to be together. And so, I mean, I've just really found that that's been very good. I've enjoyed that, and it made me feel good during COVID that we could do stuff to help people in our community that were really hurting. So
Great. Thanks, Liz. Are there any other, if folks can raise their hands, if there are any other questions? Allie, I saw your hand pop up.
Yeah, thanks. I just had a quick question, and maybe I missed this. What are the terms of the membership? I mean, not membership, for the serving on the board. Is it a yearly or is it more than a year?
It is 1 year.
It is 1 year. Okay, so they have
but you can rerun. You can rerun.
Correct.
No, I understood. I just didn't know.
Liz has not been president for 10 years, so.
No.
Not 10 years, seven.
I wasn't sure if the elections are annually or if they're like every 2 years or something.
No, they're every year.
Yep, they are every year.
Okay, thanks.
Of course.
And that could be, other other neighborhood associations do it differently. So
Sure.
Not everybody's the same. It's different with every community group, and it depends on how many people you have on your board. And of course, bylaws, you can redo the bylaws. So.
All right, we've got a couple more hands up. Ben, I saw your hand pop up.
Yeah, for the applications, do you want resumes or CVs attached to those applications as well?
I don't believe we required them. And again, Elvis, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it wouldn't hurt if you want to include supplemental information.
Cool.
Nina, your hand is up. What's your question?
My question was in regards to accountability. So I've been a member of quite a few boards in my lifetime, and there's been a significant amount of time that I've invested into organizations where certain roles and responsibilities, especially since it is a volunteer position, will often get bypassed because people either A, get too busy or, say they're committed and not. What kind of systems do you have in place in terms of accountability to help support the people that are taking on these roles? So that way, if, you're the director of, events and coordination, you are sure that you're going to be set up for success and you're not being thrown into a role that was just created without any kind of system or structure in place to help support you in that role. And then you're taking on all of the responsibility. And if you fail, you're letting down your entire neighborhood. But in reality, you're just one person trying to do something for like 10,000 plus people. And then also, sorry, it's a two-part question.
Yeah.
What is your system for accountability for respect within the group, like respecting each other's roles, respecting each other's positions, opinions, differences of opinions, and thus forth? Because I've attended a couple meetings now, and I've seen a few moments where there were people that came with genuine concerns or requests, and if it didn't fit the structure of that moment, from my envisionment, it was met with kind of harsh tones and like a little bit of a lack of a consideration. And if we're a community focused organization, that's kind of what turned me off to going to meetings for a little bit, was that those things were not readdressed. And I think as pillars of the community, if we are going to be leaders in the community, it's our responsibility to recognize that we all sit in different chairs and we all have different lifestyles and we're all coming from different places where, you know, what seems important to somebody else might not seem important to you, but it should still be recognized. And so I just want to know what's the plan for that.
Do we want to address the accountability portion first, and then we can circle back on your second question?
Yeah, well, I get the whole question is accountability, you know, personal accountability and community accountability.
Sure. So I think from a internal accountability, we do have sections in the bylaws that call for removal of officers and special committee members that are no longer performing to the duties that they were either elected to or appointed to. And so there's some accountability there. I will say that in the past, we've all kind of held each other accountable as best as possible. I know that there have been times where internally we have disagreed. And I think that it's been important that we all get to a point where, yes, we may disagree. We may have a heated conversation about disagreeing, but at the end of the day, we agree to disagree. And we go to a board vote if we're voting on something. And so it's a matter of the greater community, not just the one. And so it is this kind of self-accountability. And Elvis, Liz, do you want to add on that at all?
I mean, when somebody's got something going on the board, we do step in for each other. I mean,
Yep.
you know, we know that this is a volunteer organization, and some people like you're saying, you know, you're busy right now, right? So, you know, and like for me, I'm busy in the spring. That's when I'm really busy. So we all know that everybody has something going on, or if somebody gets sick or something's going on, we do step in for each other, or we take that into accountability.
We've actually had several of those with several of our board members over the last probably year and a half.
Yeah,
We've had various degrees of items that have required us to step away temporarily. And I think that the whole group rallied around that person to be able to kind of address those issues. So as long as it's communicated, I think that that's something that we try to do. Elvis, did you want to add any more about the internal accountability?
No, I think we did a good job at answering the question. Also, like our monthly meetings and our board meetings is a time for us to do a check-in to understand that we are addressing the concerns at hand, and we have conversations about it to ensure that, as Melissa mentioned, that we have the community's best interests in mind. So I think we do a good job at that. So, but I appreciate you bringing up that concern, Nina. It's a valid question, and yeah, but in order for, we have 5 minutes left, so I need to be mindful of time. If you have further questions, Nina, you can definitely feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to answer that question even further.
Yeah, and I will end that where typically we have time boxed meetings where it's an hour long, whether we're physically in person and we need to vacate the location that we're at, or if we're digital, we want to be respectful of folks' times. So sometimes if topics come up that are off topic of what we're discussing, or items that we don't quite have enough time to dive in fully, we always invite folks to email us so that we can either dive in and then address that at a later time when it's more appropriate, or try to do some research, because sometimes, especially when it comes to things like zoning, for instance, it's we need to do a little bit of due diligence, and we don't want to speak out of turn. And so sometimes things require a little bit more digging, as it were, at least for the stuff that I tend to work with. And thank you, Elvis, for keeping us on our time clock. We do have two more hands, or one more hand up. So Nina, did that address most of your question?
It did address most of the question, but I know that we're short for time, but one small thing, like scenario wise, say you're the director of events and you have 20 volunteers that have signed up to do this event. And at the last minute, it's 9 o'clock, you're setting up for the event for the next day, and you have 15 volunteers drop out, and now you have 5. The question is, does the entire board cancel what they're doing the next day and come and help you, or are you stuck doing that event completely by yourself? Like, what kind of commitment do you guys have to your team?
I think the expectation for that role in particular is not that you are an island within this group, and that it is in conjunction with the rest of the board. So for instance, when we did the bar crawl, one person did kind of take the lead on organizing much of it, but at the end of the day, we all helped as best we could. So I think that the goal would not be to isolate that role and provide no additional support. We tend to be on a text chain. We tend to communicate and then try to drag in our friends as well. So a lot of us have reached out to our neighbors, our partners, to be able to provide additional hands when needed. Heck, I even brought my baby in to try to rally some support at one point. For the bar crawl.
Yeah, and I mean, and we do ask like the board members, like when we're going to have an event, we do ask all the board members, are you going to be here this weekend? So, or whenever the event was going to be, like we used to do restaurant crawls and they were Wednesday nights. So we would specifically ask our board members. So we would schedule the event when everybody was present so that, you know, we try to prevent, of course, people have emergencies, Nina, and you can't do anything about them. But I mean, we don't leave people out there like an island in an event like that.
I run a lot of events, and it's been a lot of me staying up till like 5
I
o'clock
hear
in the
ya, I
morning,
hear ya.
and
Yeah.
nobody at the beginning it's like everybody's going to help, it's gonna be awesome, and then it's like, oh, time to do the thing, and there's crickets in the air.
Yeah,
So
we
I
were
just want to
gonna
make sure I'm setting
pub
myself up for success if that's a role I'm taking on.
Absolutely.
we were gonna do another pub crawl, and it turned out that everybody had something going on, so we just determined not to do it.
I want to be respectful of folks' time. Nick does
All right, yeah, we
hand
are.
up well. So Nick, if you want to ask your question before we run out of time this evening.
Well, I have a matter I'd like to talk to the board about that has nothing to do with any of this, and it's an important matter. So if you guys have time, I won't take up too much of it post this meeting, or if you would like to set up a time with the board, but it's an important thing, and I'm not exaggerating it, and I'm not scoring it.
Sure, Nick, I can stick on. I don't know. I can't speak to my other two cohorts, but I can stick on for a little bit.
I can stay up for a little while.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Well, if it's an important matter,
I won't get offended, Elvis, if you can or can't. but if
I'm
you
assuming
can,
it's a personal matter, Nick.
is it
It's-
personal?
It's pretty personal. Yeah, it's pretty personal. It also involves, it's pretty personal.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
All right. Just a
so you
reminder,
don't want-
we're recording, folks. So.
Yeah, we're recording, so.
So the other community matters, you don't need they don't want to hear this, or is this something that we can
It
hear?
has nothing to do with anybody that, it's not a public not a matter for public consumption.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Well, it is 8 o'clock on the dot. We really want to thank you all for taking the time out of your evenings to join us tonight. We hope that we answered a couple of questions and that you have a little bit more clarity. Again, jump to our website where you can find the official bylaws as well as all of the applications. Nina will consider your request, and we will be sending out an update via our newsletter. As Elvis mentioned, his magical job as of now, but we're hoping, I believe we said end of the week is what we're shooting for. Yeah,
You're going to put up the old bylaws as well.
But we will also be posting on our Facebook group, as well as updating on our website. So follow us on Facebook, join our newsletter, and you'll stay connected.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, have a great evening, you all.
Thank you.